Welcome. Today, we delve into the intricate and often misunderstood landscape of female psychology. We're going to explore aspects that, while perhaps unsettling, offer profound insights into the human experience. These aren't judgments, but observations, reflections on the silent struggles, the hidden strengths, and the complex emotional architecture that shapes the lives of countless women. Prepare to look beneath the surface, to understand the subtle currents and deep tides that often go unacknowledged, even by those closest to them. What you're about to hear might challenge your perceptions, perhaps even illuminate parts of your own experience or the experiences of women in your life. This journey into the human psyche is one of empathy, understanding, and a quiet recognition of the profound depths that exist within us all. Let's begin. 1. Women often mask emotional pains so well that even close partners miss the signs. This phenomenon is a testament to an intricate dance between resilience, societal conditioning, and a profound, often subconscious, desire to protect both themselves and those they care about from the perceived burden of their inner turmoil. It's not merely about hiding pain. It's about constructing an elaborate facade, a meticulously crafted illusion of well-being that can be almost indistinguishable from genuine contentment. A woman might be experiencing a maelstrom of grief, anxiety, disappointment, or insecurity, yet present to the world, and especially to her closest partner, a calm, composed, even cheerful demeanor. She might engage in spirited conversation, fulfill her responsibilities with unwavering dedication, laugh at jokes, and offer support to others, all while an internal landscape of suffering rages beneath the surface. The subtlety of this masking is its most disturbing aspect. It isn't always an overt act of deception, but rather a deeply ingrained coping mechanism, honed over years, perhaps even decades, of navigating a world that often implicitly and explicitly discourages overt displays of vulnerability, particularly from women. The reasons behind this masterful concealment are manifold and deeply rooted. Often, it stems from a fear of being perceived as weak, overly emotional, or dramatic, labels that society has historically and continues to unfairly attach to women who express their pain openly. There's a powerful internal pressure to appear strong, capable, and unburdened, a notion that can be reinforced by cultural narratives and personal experiences. A woman might have learned early in life that her pain was dismissed, minimized, or met with discomfort, leading her to internalize the belief that it's safer or even kinder to keep it to herself. She might genuinely believe that expressing her pain would burden her partner, make them worry unnecessarily, or even push them away. This protective instinct, while seemingly altruistic, can create an immense psychological toll. The energy required to maintain such an elaborate mask is staggering, leading to emotional exhaustion, a pervasive sense of isolation, and a deepening of the very pain she is trying to conceal. The internal dialogue might be relentless. I shouldn't feel this way. I need to be strong for them. They have enough on their plate. My problems aren't as important. For close partners, missing these signs is not necessarily a reflection of a lack of care or attention, but rather an unfortunate consequence of the mask's efficacy. The woman has become so adept at camouflaging her emotional state that even someone intimately connected to her, someone who knows her habits, her expressions, her nuances, can be genuinely fooled. The partner might interpret her busy schedule as engagement, her quiet moments as contentment, her forced smiles as genuine joy. They trust the outward presentation because it aligns with their desire for her well-being and their belief in her strength. The subtle cues, a slight hesitation before answering, a fleeting shadow in her eyes, a change in her sleep patterns, a diminished appetite, might be dismissed as temporary fatigue or stress rather than recognized as distress signals. When the mask eventually cracks, or when the pain becomes too immense to contain, the partner can often feel blindsided, confused, and even guilty, wondering how they could have been so unaware. This revelation can be profoundly disturbing, not just for the woman who has suffered in silence, but for the partner who realizes the vast chasm that has existed between what was presented and what was truly felt. It highlights the profound challenge of true intimacy when one person is carrying such a heavy, invisible burden, and the other is unknowingly existing in a carefully constructed reality. The disturbing truth lies in the silent suffering, the profound loneliness within a relationship, and the immense psychological cost of maintaining an illusion of emotional invulnerability. It speaks to a deep-seated human tendency to protect others from our own vulnerability, even when that protection comes at the expense of our own healing and the depth of our most important connections. 2. Women often stay in unhealthy relationships because they fear starting over. The gravity of this statement lies in its profound revelation about the human capacity for self-sacrifice and the insidious power of fear, often overriding even the most fundamental instincts for self-preservation and happiness. It's not simply about comfort or laziness. It's a complex psychological entanglement rooted in a myriad of fears that can collectively create an almost impenetrable barrier to leaving a situation, no matter how toxic or damaging it has become. The unhealthy relationship itself can manifest in countless forms: emotional manipulation, constant criticism, neglect, infidelity, a pervasive sense of unhappiness, or even outright abuse. Yet despite the clear and present suffering, the prospect of starting over looms as an even greater, more terrifying unknown. This fear is not monolithic. It's a tapestry woven from multiple threads of anxiety, each contributing to the perceived impossibility of forging a new path. One dominant thread is the fear of loneliness. After investing significant time, energy, and emotion into a relationship, the idea of suddenly being alone can be paralyzing. This isn't just about lacking a partner. It's about the potential loss of a social structure, shared friends, routines, and the very identity that has become intertwined with being part of a couple. The thought of navigating life as a single again, especially after a long period, can feel like stepping into a vast, empty void. This fear is often exacerbated by societal pressures and internalized narratives that subtly, or not so subtly, suggest that a woman's value is tied to her relational status. There's a fear of judgment, of pity, of being seen as failed or undesirable if she is no longer in a relationship. This external pressure can become a powerful internal inhibitor, making the known misery of the present relationship seem preferable to the imagined misery of a solitary future. Beyond loneliness, there's the profound fear of the unknown. Starting over implies a complete dismantling of a familiar life and the arduous task of rebuilding. This encompasses practical considerations like financial instability, finding a new place to live, or navigating legal processes if there are shared assets or children. For many women, economic dependence or a significant disparity in financial resources can be a concrete, terrifying barrier. The thought of facing these logistical challenges alone, without the perceived, even if illusory, support of a partner, can be overwhelming. But the fear extends far beyond the practical. It delves into the existential. The fear of making the wrong decision, the fear of regret, the fear of not finding someone else, the fear of enduring the painful process of healing and self-discovery that inevitably follows a breakup. It's the fear of the emotional labor involved in re-establishing a sense of self, of rediscovering personal strengths, and of rebuilding a life narrative that no longer includes the person who was once central to it. Furthermore, there's a deeply disturbing element related to self-worth and identity. Over time, in unhealthy relationships, a woman's sense of self can become eroded. Her confidence might be chipped away by criticism, her independence stifled by control, and her ability to trust her own judgment compromised by manipulation. When her self-esteem is low, the idea of venturing out into the world alone, believing in her own capacity to thrive, can feel utterly impossible. She might internalize the narrative that she is unlovable, incapable, or that she deserves the treatment she is receiving. The unhealthy relationship, despite its pain, provides a twisted sense of familiarity and a perceived safety net, however threadbare, against the terrifying prospect of having to prove her worth to herself and to the world anew. The effort required to detach, to grieve, to heal, and to reconstruct a positive self-image can feel like an insurmountable mountain. This isn't just about fear of the external world. It's about a profound, often subconscious, fear of her own capacity to survive and flourish independently. The disturbing truth here is the depth to which fear can entrap an individual, making a known hell seem preferable to an unknown future, and the immense psychological strength it takes to break free from such a powerful, self-imposed prison. 3. Many women bond faster emotionally after vulnerability triggers like stress or trauma. This particular psychological dynamic reveals a profound interplay between emotional exposure, shared experience, and the innate human drive for connection, especially in the face of adversity. It's a phenomenon that often accelerates the natural processes of intimacy and trust building, sometimes to a startling degree. When a woman experiences a significant vulnerability trigger, be it a period of intense stress, a shared crisis, a personal trauma, or even witnessing another's deep distress, her emotional defenses can temporarily lower. This isn't a sign of weakness. Rather, it's a biological and psychological response designed to seek safety and connection in times of perceived threat or instability. In these moments, the usual social barriers and cautious approaches to forming bonds can become less rigid, paving the way for a more rapid and intense emotional attachment. The mechanism behind this accelerated bonding is multifaceted. Firstly, shared stress or trauma creates a unique common ground. When two individuals or a group of individuals navigate a difficult experience together, they become witnesses to each other's raw, unvarnished humanity. The usual filters of social performance and carefully curated self-presentation are stripped away, revealing genuine fear, pain, resilience, and vulnerability. This shared exposure fosters a sense of "we're in this together," creating an immediate, unspoken understanding that bypasses the superficialities of typical social interactions. For women, who are often socialized to value connection and emotional depth, this shared vulnerability can be a powerful catalyst for intimacy. The act of weathering a storm side by side, offering and receiving support, or simply acknowledging each other's struggle lays a foundation of trust that might take months or even years to build under normal circumstances. Secondly, the neurochemical responses to stress and trauma play a significant role. Acute stress can trigger the release of hormones, like oxytocin, often referred to as the bonding hormone. While oxytocin is known for its role in maternal bonding and romantic attachment, it also facilitates social bonding in general, particularly in situations where social support is perceived as crucial for survival or coping. In stressful or traumatic situations, the body's natural inclination to seek comfort and connection can be amplified, making individuals more receptive to forming close ties with those present. For women, who on average tend to exhibit stronger oxytocin responses to social stressors than men, this can translate into a heightened propensity for rapid emotional attachment in such contexts. The brain essentially signals, "This person saw me at my weakest, helped me, or shared this difficult experience with me, therefore they are safe and I can trust them deeply." However, the disturbing aspect of this accelerated bonding lies in its potential for misinterpretation or the formation of attachments that might not be sustainable or healthy in the long run. While the initial bond formed under duress can feel incredibly powerful and authentic, the intensity of the connection might be partly a product of the extreme circumstances, rather than a reflection of deep compatibility or long-term suitability. Once the stress or trauma subsides, the emotional landscape changes, and the foundations of the relationship might be reevaluated under calmer, less urgent conditions. This can lead to disillusionment, as the initial intense bond forged in the crucible of shared vulnerability might struggle to translate into a stable, everyday connection. A woman might find herself deeply attached to someone primarily because they were present during a difficult time, even if other aspects of the relationship are not ideal. The disturbing truth is that while vulnerability can forge powerful connections, the speed and intensity of these bonds, especially after a crisis, can sometimes obscure underlying incompatibilities or create dependencies that are difficult to untangle once the immediate need for mutual support diminishes.
It reveals how deeply our emotional systems are wired to seek solace and connection, even in ways that can sometimes lead to complex and challenging relational outcomes.
4. Women may overanalyze harmless behavior due to past relational wounds. This particular psychological tendency highlights the enduring and insidious impact of unresolved relational trauma, demonstrating how past hurts can cast long shadows over present interactions, even those that are benign. It's not a conscious choice to be hypervigilant or distrustful. Rather, it's often an unconscious defense mechanism, a protective reflex born from experiences where trust was betrayed, intentions were misconstrued, or emotional safety was compromised. When a woman has experienced significant relational wounds, such as infidelity, emotional abandonment, gaslighting, chronic criticism, or a pattern of inconsistent behavior from a partner, her psychological system becomes wired to anticipate similar threats. The world, particularly the relational world, begins to feel less safe, and every interaction carries the potential for re-injury. The harmless behavior in question can be incredibly subtle and varied. A delayed text response, a brief moment of distraction during a conversation, a change in tone of voice, a forgotten detail, a slight shift in routine, or a casual remark that was not intended to be hurtful. To someone without a history of relational wounds, these might pass by unnoticed or be easily dismissed as normal human quirks. However, for a woman carrying the weight of past hurts, these seemingly innocuous actions can trigger a cascade of internal processes. Her mind, in an attempt to protect her from future pain, will meticulously scrutinize every detail, searching for patterns, inconsistencies, or hidden meanings. This isn't about being irrational in a vacuum, it's a learned survival strategy. Her brain is essentially asking, is this a sign of impending danger? Is this the beginning of a repeat of what happened before? Can I trust this person? The overanalysis manifests as an intense cognitive rumination. She might replay conversations repeatedly, dissecting every word, every pause, every expression. She might construct elaborate scenarios in her mind, imagining worst-case outcomes based on minimal evidence. A delayed text, for example, might not simply be interpreted as they're busy, but rather as they're losing interest, they're with someone else, or they're intentionally ignoring me. This internal narrative, fueled by past pain, often amplifies minor issues into significant threats, creating anxiety and distress where none might objectively exist. The emotional cost of this constant vigilance is immense. It leads to chronic stress, exhaustion, and a pervasive sense of unease. It can also create a self-fulfilling prophecy, as her anxiety and questioning might inadvertently strain the very relationship she is trying to protect. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its involuntary nature and its cruel irony. The woman desires safety and connection, yet her past experiences compel her to interpret the world in a way that often undermines those very desires. Her protective mechanisms, while stemming from a legitimate need to avoid further pain, can inadvertently create distance, foster mistrust, and prevent her from fully experiencing the present reality of a potentially healthy relationship. It highlights how deeply trauma can embed itself in our cognitive and emotional frameworks, shaping our perceptions and reactions long after the initial wound has healed. A partner who is genuinely caring and consistent might find themselves repeatedly questioned, their harmless actions scrutinized, leading to frustration and misunderstanding. The woman, meanwhile, is trapped in a loop of anxiety, constantly searching for threats that may not exist, all because her past has taught her that vulnerability is dangerous. It's a poignant reminder that healing from relational wounds is not merely about moving on, but about retraining the brain to distinguish between genuine threats and the innocent nuances of human interaction, a process that requires immense self-awareness, empathy, and often professional support. 5. Women can feel guilty for setting boundaries even when necessary. This psychological dynamic reveals a deeply ingrained conflict between self-preservation and the profound social conditioning that often prioritizes the needs and comfort of others, particularly within relational contexts. Setting a boundary, at its core, is an act of self-definition. It's stating what is acceptable and unacceptable, what one needs and what one cannot tolerate. It's an assertion of personal space, emotional well-being, and individual limits. Yet, for many women, this essential act of self-care can be fraught with an intense, often debilitating sense of guilt, even when the boundary is undeniably necessary for their mental, emotional, or physical health. This guilt is not accidental. It is a complex emotional response shaped by a lifetime of messages, both subtle and overt, about their role in relationships and society. One primary driver of this guilt is the deeply ingrained socialization that often teaches women to be caregivers, nurturers, and peacemakers. From a young age, many women are implicitly and explicitly encouraged to be accommodating, empathetic, and to prioritize the harmony of relationships above their own individual needs. The idea of saying no, of asserting a personal limit, or of expressing a need that might inconvenient or displease someone else can therefore feel like a transgression against these deeply internalized values. There's a fear of being perceived as selfish, unkind, demanding, or unloving. This fear is potent because it taps into a core desire for acceptance and belonging. The thought of potentially disappointing or upsetting someone, especially a loved one, can trigger a wave of self-recrimination and anxiety. The inner voice might whisper, "Am I being unreasonable? Am I asking for too much? Will they still like me? Am I hurting them?" Furthermore, the experience of having boundaries violated or dismissed in the past can contribute to this guilt. If a woman has previously attempted to set a boundary, only to be met with anger, manipulation, or emotional withdrawal, she might internalize the belief that her boundaries are inherently problematic, or that asserting them will inevitably lead to negative consequences. The guilt then becomes a preemptive defense mechanism, an internal pressure to avoid potential external repercussions by simply not setting the boundary in the first place, or by immediately retracting it if she does. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in the way it subtly erodes a woman's sense of self and agency. When a woman consistently feels guilty for asserting her needs, she effectively teaches herself that her needs are less important than others, or that her well-being is secondary to maintaining external harmony. This can lead to chronic self-neglect, burnout, resentment, and a gradual loss of her authentic voice. She might find herself consistently overextending, compromising her values, or tolerating unacceptable behavior, all because the emotional cost of setting a boundary, the internal guilt, feels more unbearable than the discomfort of its absence. This also creates a relational dynamic where others may unconsciously learn that her boundaries are permeable, further reinforcing the cycle. The disturbing truth is that a fundamental act of self-respect becomes an internal battle, forcing women to choose between their own emotional integrity and the deeply ingrained fear of being perceived as difficult or unloving. It reveals the immense psychological burden placed upon women to maintain an often unrealistic ideal of selflessness, even at the expense of their own mental health and authentic self-expression. 6. Women often blame themselves first when something goes wrong. This pervasive tendency reveals a deeply ingrained psychological pattern, often rooted in a complex interplay of societal conditioning, empathy, and a profound sense of responsibility, which can paradoxically lead to self-inflicted emotional distress. When faced with an adverse outcome, a conflict, a mistake, or even a systemic failure, many women's immediate instinct is not to externalize blame or seek external factors, but to turn the gaze inward, scrutinizing their own actions, words, and perceived shortcomings. This self-blame is not necessarily a sign of low self-esteem in all cases, though it can certainly exacerbate it. Rather, it often stems from a deeply cultivated sense of accountability and a powerful drive to understand, control, and repair situations. One significant factor contributing to this phenomenon is the pervasive societal expectation for women to be good, responsible, and nurturing. From a young age, many girls are taught to be considerate of others' feelings, to anticipate needs, and to maintain harmony in relationships. When things go awry, especially in interpersonal contexts, this ingrained sense of responsibility can quickly morph into self-reproach. There's an internal narrative that suggests, if I had done X differently, if I had been more Y, if I had foreseen Z, this wouldn't have happened. This can be particularly pronounced in relationships, where a woman might feel an immense burden to ensure the emotional well-being of her partner or family. If a conflict arises, she might immediately question her communication style, her emotional responses, or her perceived failures in meeting her partner's needs, even if the responsibility is shared or entirely external to her. Furthermore, women are often socialized to be highly attuned to emotional nuances and relational dynamics. This heightened empathy, while a strength, can also make them more susceptible to internalizing negative outcomes. They might feel the weight of others' disappointment or frustration more acutely, leading them to quickly assume fault in an attempt to alleviate that discomfort. This is compounded by instances where women are indeed blamed for issues outside their control, reinforcing the idea that they are inherently responsible for negative outcomes. This can be seen in historical and contemporary narratives where women are blamed for relationship failures, family problems, or even societal ills, regardless of the actual circumstances. The disturbing aspect of this self-blame mechanism lies in its potential to create a relentless cycle of self-criticism and guilt. By consistently internalizing fault, women can carry an undue emotional burden, leading to chronic stress, anxiety, and an erosion of self-worth. It can prevent them from accurately assessing situations, from recognizing shared responsibility, or from identifying external factors that are truly at play. This constant self-scrutiny can also make it difficult to assert their own needs or to defend themselves against unfair criticism, as they are already predisposed to accepting fault. In professional settings, this can lead to women taking on excessive workloads or apologizing for circumstances beyond their control. In personal relationships, it can lead to an imbalance of power, where one partner consistently takes responsibility for issues that are equally or primarily the other's. The disturbing truth is that a powerful internal mechanism, often born from a desire for harmony and responsibility, can become a significant barrier to self-compassion and objective self-assessment, trapping women in a cycle of unwarranted guilt and emotional burden. It highlights the profound impact of societal expectations and deeply ingrained patterns of thought that can lead to a silent, persistent self-punishment for perceived failures, even when no true fault lies within. 7. Women can love deeply while simultaneously questioning the relationship. This psychological paradox speaks volumes about the complexity of female emotional processing and the nuanced ways in which love, attachment, and critical evaluation can coexist, often in a state of internal tension. It challenges the simplistic notion that love is an all-encompassing, unwavering emotion that precludes doubt. Instead, it reveals a profound capacity to hold seemingly contradictory feelings and thoughts about a partnership, even when the emotional investment is considerable. A woman might genuinely feel an intense, profound love for her partner, experiencing deep affection, care, loyalty, and a strong desire for their well-being and shared future. Yet, concurrently, a separate, analytical part of her mind can be actively scrutinizing, questioning, and evaluating the health, sustainability, and long-term viability of the relationship. This simultaneous existence of deep love and pervasive questioning is not a sign of superficiality or fickleness. Rather, it often reflects a highly attuned emotional intelligence, coupled with a powerful drive for self-preservation and a profound consideration for the future. The questioning might stem from various sources. It could be triggered by subtle inconsistencies in a partner's behavior, a recurring pattern of unmet emotional needs, a misalignment of values or life goals that become increasingly apparent, or a nagging intuition that something fundamental is amiss. While the heart aches with love and attachment, the mind observes, collects data, and processes potential threats or incompatibilities. This internal dialogue might sound like, "I love him so much, but I don't feel truly seen," or "We have such a deep connection, but I worry about our future financial stability," or "He's wonderful in so many ways, but I keep questioning if this is truly what I want for the rest of my life." The depth of the love can, in fact, intensify the questioning. Because the emotional stakes are so high, because the commitment is so profound, the need for the relationship to be genuinely healthy, fulfilling, and sustainable becomes paramount. It's not just a casual assessment, it's a profound examination of a foundational aspect of her life. This critical analysis is often driven by a desire to protect that very love, to ensure that the investment of emotion, time, and future hopes is well placed. If she didn't care deeply, the questioning might be less intense, or she might simply disengage. But precisely because she loves profoundly, the potential flaws or concerns become magnified, demanding attention and resolution. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in the immense internal conflict and emotional labor it entails. To love someone deeply while simultaneously harboring fundamental doubts about the relationship creates a constant state of psychological tension. It can lead to sleepless nights, pervasive anxiety, and a feeling of being perpetually unsettled. This internal struggle is often invisible to the partner, who may only perceive the expressions of love and feel secure, completely unaware of the active, critical evaluation happening beneath the surface. This can lead to a woman feeling profoundly isolated in her doubts, unable to articulate them fully without fearing she will undermine the love she genuinely feels or hurt her partner. It also means that when a woman ultimately decides to end a relationship, even one where she was deeply loved and expressed love, the decision is often the culmination of a long, arduous, and silent internal battle, not a sudden whim. The disturbing truth is that profound love does not always equate to unwavering certainty, and the capacity to hold both can be an immense, silent burden, revealing the intricate and often painful journey of discerning true compatibility and long-term happiness even amidst the most intense affection. It underscores the fact that love, while powerful, is not always enough to sustain a relationship without other critical components being in place. 8. Women sometimes test partners to confirm emotional safety. This behavior, while often misunderstood or even labeled as manipulative, is in fact a deeply rooted, often unconscious mechanism employed by women to gauge the reliability, trustworthiness, and emotional stability of a partner. It stems from an innate human need for security and a learned wisdom that words alone are not always sufficient to convey true commitment or character. These tests are rarely overt or explicitly stated. Instead, they manifest as subtle challenges, requests, or reactions designed to observe a partner's response under specific circumstances. The goal is not to trick or ensnare, but to gather critical information about a partner's emotional architecture and their genuine capacity for empathy, consistency, and dedication when faced with mild pressure or inconvenience. The underlying motivation for these tests is often a historical context, either personal or societal, where women have learned that emotional safety is not always guaranteed. Past experiences of betrayal, inconsistency, emotional unavailability, or even subtle forms of neglect can hardwire a woman to be hypervigilant. She might have learned that people can say one thing and do another, or that their commitment can waver under pressure. Therefore, she seeks proof, not just promises.
These tests are essentially a stress testing the relational bond, looking for evidence that a partner's actions align with their words and that their emotional presence is stable and dependable. The nature of these tests can vary widely. They might involve a deliberate expression of vulnerability to see how a partner responds to her pain or insecurity. Does he listen patiently, offer comfort, or dismiss her feelings? It could be a mild expression of disagreement or a differing opinion to see if he engages respectfully or becomes defensive and dismissive. It might be a request for help or support, even for something small, to observe his willingness to inconvenience himself for her. Sometimes it's a deliberate withdrawal or a moment of emotional distance to see if he notices, if he pursues, if he shows concern, or if he simply matches her distance. These are not grand schemes. They are often subtle, almost instinctive probes into the emotional landscape of the relationship. She is looking for consistency, empathy, patience, and a genuine desire to connect and support, even when it's not easy or convenient. She is checking if he truly sees her and if her emotional well-being is genuinely prioritized. The disturbing aspect of this behavior lies in its necessity and its potential for misunderstanding. It's disturbing that women often feel the need to resort to such indirect methods to confirm something as fundamental as emotional safety. It speaks to a profound lack of inherent trust, often cultivated by past experiences or societal narratives, that makes direct, open communication about these anxieties feel too risky. If the partner fails the test, even unknowingly, it can confirm her fears, leading to increased anxiety and a deepening of mistrust, even if the partner's actions were innocent or simply clumsy. Conversely, if the partner passes, it can solidify her sense of security and deepen the bond. However, the partner, unaware of being tested, might perceive the behavior as confusing, demanding, or even manipulative, leading to resentment or misunderstandings. This creates a silent, often unacknowledged, dynamic where one person is actively seeking reassurance through indirect means, and the other is responding, or failing to respond, without full awareness of the underlying stakes. The disturbing truth is that this highlights a foundational anxiety about relational security, forcing women to employ subtle strategies to ascertain the true depth of a partner's commitment and emotional reliability, rather than simply being able to trust in overt declarations. It reveals the complex psychological dance required when emotional safety is not implicitly assumed, but must be carefully, often covertly, confirmed.
9. Women tend to feel heartbreak more intensely at the beginning of a breakup. This observation, while not universally true for every individual, holds a significant statistical and psychological weight, revealing a distinct pattern in how many women process the immediate aftermath of a relational severance. The initial phase of a breakup for many women is often characterized by a profound, almost visceral intensity of emotional pain, a crushing weight that can feel all-consuming and utterly unbearable. While men may experience their own intense pain, the initial acute shock and emotional devastation often appear more pronounced in women, manifesting as deep sorrow, physical symptoms of distress, and an overwhelming sense of loss and disorientation. This isn't to say that men don't suffer deeply, but rather that the timing and manifestation of the most intense suffering can differ. Several interconnected factors contribute to this initial heightened intensity for women. Firstly, women are often socialized to be more emotionally expressive and to process emotions through verbalization and outward display. This means that the pain, when it hits, is not as readily suppressed or internalized. It is felt acutely, processed openly, and often expressed through tears, grief, and a desperate need for support and understanding. This immediate outpouring, while painful, is a natural and healthy part of the grieving process, but it can make the initial period feel overwhelmingly intense. The floodgates open, and the full force of the loss is felt without immediate psychological buffering. Secondly, women often invest deeply, emotionally and often practically, in the fabric of a relationship. For many, a romantic partnership is not just an adjunct to life, but a central pillar, intertwined with identity, future plans, and a sense of belonging. When this pillar crumbles, the entire structure of their perceived future can feel shattered. The loss isn't just of a person, but of a shared narrative, a future imagined, and a significant part of their self-definition. The initial shock of this dismantling can be utterly disorienting, leading to an intense sense of emptiness and profound grief for what was and what will no longer be. This intense investment means the immediate emotional withdrawal, the sudden void, is felt with an acute sharpness. Furthermore, women tend to ruminate more on relational issues and emotional details, as we will discuss later. In the immediate aftermath of a breakup, this tendency can lead to an incessant replay of conversations, analysis of events, and a painful reevaluation of the entire relationship. This cognitive processing, while eventually necessary for healing, contributes to the initial intensity of the pain, as the mind is relentlessly engaged in dissecting the wound rather than allowing for immediate emotional detachment. The why questions, the what-if scenarios, and the painful memories flood the consciousness, making escape from the emotional onslaught incredibly difficult. The disturbing aspect of this initial intense heartbreak lies in its raw, unfiltered brutality. It highlights the profound vulnerability that comes with deep emotional investment and the shattering impact of relational loss. For the woman experiencing it, it can feel like the world has ended, like a part of her has died, and that the pain will never subside. This immediate, overwhelming agony can be terrifying, leading to a sense of powerlessness and despair. While this intense initial phase often gives way to a more gradual healing process, the memory of that raw, visceral pain can linger, shaping future approaches to relationships and vulnerability. It underscores how deeply intertwined our romantic connections are with our sense of self and future, and how the sudden severing of those ties can trigger an emotional earthquake that, for many women, manifests with devastating intensity in the immediate aftermath. It reveals the profound emotional burden that comes with the capacity for deep love and attachment, and the acute suffering when that attachment is suddenly, irrevocably broken. Women's self-worth is often tied to perceived attractiveness. This particular psychological dynamic is a deeply entrenched and profoundly disturbing reflection of pervasive societal pressures and cultural narratives that have historically, and continue to, define a woman's value and social currency primarily through her physical appearance. It's not an inherent biological imperative, but rather a learned association, a subtle yet powerful conditioning that starts from a young age and is reinforced throughout a woman's life. While men also face pressures regarding appearance, for women, the link between perceived attractiveness and fundamental self-worth is often far more explicit and impactful, creating a pervasive and often exhausting internal struggle. From childhood, girls are inundated with messages, both overt and subtle, from media, peers, and even family, that beauty is a primary determinant of acceptance, love, and success. Fairy tales often portray beautiful princesses as deserving of happiness, while ugly characters are villains or outcasts. Advertisements relentlessly present an idealized, often unattainable standard of beauty, implicitly telling women that they must conform to these images to be desirable, successful, and worthy. This constant external validation of appearance subtly teaches women that their intrinsic value is contingent upon how they look to others. It's not just about looking good, it's about being perceived as good, as valuable, as lovable because of one's appearance. This external focus can lead to a precarious foundation for self-worth. If a woman's sense of value is heavily dependent on how she believes others perceive her physical attractiveness, then any perceived flaw, any sign of aging, any deviation from the current beauty standard can trigger profound insecurity and a significant drop in self-esteem. A bad hair day, a breakout, a few extra pounds, or even an unreturned glance can send her into a spiral of self-doubt. Her internal barometer of self-worth becomes inextricably linked to an external, often superficial, and constantly shifting metric. This creates a constant pressure to maintain an image, to invest significant time, energy, and financial resources into grooming, fashion, and even cosmetic procedures, all in an effort to shore up a fragile sense of self. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its inherent fragility and its potential for profound psychological damage. When self-worth is tied to something as ephemeral and subjective as perceived attractiveness, it becomes vulnerable to external judgments and the inevitable changes of time. As women age, societal beauty standards often become more rigid and less inclusive, leading to a potential crisis of self-worth for those who have relied heavily on their youthful appearance. This can manifest as anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, and a pervasive sense of inadequacy. It also limits a woman's ability to develop a robust, intrinsic sense of self based on her character, intelligence, talents, and contributions to the world. She might achieve great things, possess immense kindness and wisdom, yet still feel fundamentally unworthy if she perceives herself as not meeting a specific aesthetic ideal. The disturbing truth is that this societal conditioning forces many women into a lifelong pursuit of an external validation that is ultimately fleeting and unsatisfying, diverting immense energy from more meaningful pursuits and hindering the development of a resilient, authentic self-esteem. It reveals the deep-seated psychological cost of a culture that often values the packaging of a woman more than her substance, leading to a silent, often painful internal struggle for worthiness.
11. Women may stay silent to avoid being labeled dramatic. This particular psychological pattern is a direct and painful consequence of a deeply ingrained societal prejudice that disproportionately dismisses, minimizes, and devalues women's emotional experiences and expressions. The label dramatic, when applied to women, is rarely benign. It functions as a potent weapon, a silencing mechanism designed to invalidate their feelings, concerns, and legitimate grievances. Consequently, many women learn, often through painful experience, that expressing their authentic emotions, especially those perceived as strong or negative, like anger, frustration, or deep sadness, can lead to immediate and debilitating social repercussions. The fear of being branded dramatic becomes a powerful inhibitor, compelling them to suppress their true feelings and remain silent, even when their internal world is in turmoil or when they are experiencing genuine distress. This fear is cultivated from a young age. Girls are often, subtly or overtly, taught that good girls are pleasant, agreeable, and calm. Emotional outbursts, passionate arguments, or even persistent expressions of unhappiness can be met with eye rolls, dismissive remarks, or accusations of overreacting. In adult relationships, both personal and professional, a woman who expresses strong emotions might find her concerns immediately delegitimized. Instead of her message being heard, her delivery is critiqued. "Why are you getting so emotional? You're overthinking this. It's not that big of a deal." These phrases, often used to shut down communication, implicitly reinforce the idea that her feelings are excessive or irrational. The label dramatic then becomes a convenient shorthand for dismissing her entirely, allowing others to avoid engaging with the substance of her concerns. The consequence of this fear is a profound internal suppression. A woman might bite her tongue, swallow her anger, force a smile, or feign indifference, even when she is deeply hurt, frustrated, or experiencing injustice. She learns to edit her emotional responses, to filter her expressions, and to present a more subdued version of herself to the world. This is not a conscious desire to deceive, but a protective strategy. She understands that the cost of authentic emotional expression can be too high. The loss of credibility, the alienation of others, the dismissal of her legitimate needs, or even the jeopardizing of her relationships or career. The silence, therefore, becomes a form of self-preservation, a way to maintain her standing, her peace, and her perceived sanity in a world that often struggles to accept the full spectrum of female emotion. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in the immense psychological toll it exacts.
When women consistently suppress their emotions, particularly anger or frustration, these feelings don't simply disappear. They fester, leading to chronic stress, anxiety, resentment, and even physical manifestations of emotional pain. It creates a profound sense of isolation, as she feels she cannot be truly known or understood if she cannot express her authentic self. This suppression also hinders healthy conflict resolution, as genuine issues are swept under the rug rather than addressed, leading to unresolved tensions that can slowly erode relationships. Furthermore, it perpetuates a harmful stereotype, reinforcing the very idea that women's emotions are inherently irrational or excessive, thus making it even harder for future generations to break free from this silencing cycle. The disturbing truth is that many women are forced into a silent suffering, denied the basic human right to express their feelings without fear of invalidation, all because of a derogatory label that strips them of their emotional legitimacy and forces them to choose between authenticity and acceptance. It reveals a societal pathology that actively punishes emotional honesty in women, compelling them to disappear into a quiet, often painful invisibility. 12. Women have a higher tendency to forgive emotionally harmful behavior. This observation points to a deeply complex and often distressing psychological pattern, rooted in a confluence of factors, including empathy, relational conditioning, and a powerful, sometimes self-sacrificing, desire to preserve connections. While forgiveness is often lauded as a virtue, this specific tendency in women can, disturbingly, lead to repeated exposure to pain and a gradual erosion of self-worth. It's not about a lack of discernment, but rather a profound capacity for understanding, empathy, and a willingness to overlook or rationalize transgressions in the name of love, loyalty, or the hope for change. One significant contributor to this tendency is the societal expectation for women to be nurturing, compassionate, and forgiving. From a young age, many women are taught to prioritize harmony in relationships, to be the emotional caretakers, and to extend grace even when it's not reciprocated. This conditioning can create an internal pressure to forgive, even when the emotional harm is significant and repetitive. There's an underlying belief that forgiveness is a pathway to healing and reconciliation, and that holding on to anger or resentment is detrimental to the relationship. This can lead to a woman feeling guilty if she doesn't forgive, even if the harm caused is substantial and ongoing. Furthermore, women often possess a highly developed capacity for empathy, allowing them to understand the potential motivations or struggles behind a partner's harmful behavior. They might rationalize the actions by considering the partner's stress, past trauma, or perceived good intentions, even if the impact on them is devastating. This empathetic understanding, while a valuable human trait, can become a double-edged sword when it leads to excusing behavior that is genuinely damaging. They might think, "He didn't mean it. He's going through a tough time," or "If I just understand him more, he'll change." This hope for change, or the belief in a partner's underlying goodness, can be a powerful motivator for repeated forgiveness, even when there's no genuine remorse or change in behavior. The depth of emotional investment also plays a crucial role. After investing significant time, love, and effort into a relationship, the idea of abandoning it, even when it's causing harm, can be incredibly difficult. Forgiveness in this context can become a desperate attempt to salvage the relationship, to restore the initial connection, and to avoid the painful process of starting over, as discussed earlier. It's a way of holding on to the hope that the relationship can return to a healthier state, even if that hope is repeatedly dashed. The disturbing aspect of this tendency lies in its potential for perpetual self-sacrifice and the normalization of emotionally harmful patterns. When a woman repeatedly forgives without genuine change from her partner, she inadvertently sets a precedent that such behavior is acceptable. This can lead to a cycle of harm and forgiveness, where her boundaries are continually breached, her emotional needs are consistently neglected, and her sense of self-worth is gradually eroded. She might find herself trapped in a pattern where her forgiveness is exploited, leading to deeper and more insidious forms of emotional abuse. The disturbing truth is that this powerful capacity for empathy and forgiveness, when misdirected or exploited, can become a vulnerability, leading women to endure prolonged suffering in the name of love or loyalty, rather than prioritizing their own well-being and emotional integrity. It highlights the profound challenge of balancing compassion with self-preservation and the insidious ways in which deeply ingrained relational patterns can lead to a silent but profound self-betrayal. 13. Women crave emotional validation but may not ask for it directly. This psychological dynamic unveils a nuanced and often frustrating aspect of female communication and emotional needs, rooted in a complex interplay of societal conditioning, vulnerability, and the intricate dance of indirect communication. Emotional validation, the acknowledgement and acceptance of one's feelings, thoughts, and experiences as legitimate and understandable, is a fundamental human need. For women, this craving can be particularly acute, yet the pathway to obtaining it is frequently indirect, leading to a silent struggle and potential misunderstandings within relationships. The desire for validation is not about seeking approval for their emotions, but rather a profound need to feel seen, heard, and understood in their internal world. One primary reason for this indirectness is the deeply ingrained fear of being perceived as needy, demanding, or overly emotional, as discussed earlier with the dramatic label. Many women are socialized to believe that explicitly asking for emotional support or validation is a sign of weakness or an imposition on others. There's a subtle but pervasive message that strong, independent women should be able to manage their emotions internally, and that vocalizing a need for validation makes them less appealing or more burdensome. This fear can lead to a reluctance to articulate their needs directly, as they anticipate potential dismissal, criticism, or a perceived burden on their partner. The internal dialogue might be, "If I have to ask for it, it doesn't count," or "They should just know what I need if they truly care," or "I don't want to seem like I'm seeking attention." Instead of direct requests, women might employ a variety of indirect strategies to elicit validation. This could involve expressing feelings in a roundabout way, hinting at their emotional state, describing a situation in detail, hoping their partner will pick up on the underlying emotional need, or even withdrawing emotionally to see if their partner notices and reaches out. They might share a problem, not necessarily seeking a solution, but hoping for a response like, "That sounds really frustrating," or "It makes sense that you feel that way." The absence of such a response can be deeply disheartening, leading to a feeling of being unheard or misunderstood, even if the partner was genuinely trying to be helpful by offering advice. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in the silent suffering and the potential for profound relational disconnect. When emotional needs are not clearly articulated, they are often not met, leading to a buildup of resentment, frustration, and a pervasive sense of loneliness within the relationship. The woman feels unheard and misunderstood, while the partner, unaware of the unspoken need, might feel confused, inadequate, or even defensive when she expresses dissatisfaction. This indirect communication creates a guessing game, a chasm between intention and impact. The woman believes her partner should intuitively understand her needs, while the partner, often operating from a more direct communication style, genuinely doesn't perceive the unspoken request. The disturbing truth is that this essential human need for validation often becomes a hidden emotional burden, leading many women to feel perpetually unseen and misunderstood, precisely because the very social conditioning that makes them crave it also makes them hesitant to ask for it openly. It highlights the profound challenge of bridging communication gaps when underlying fears prevent the direct expression of fundamental emotional requirements, leading to a silent yearning that can deeply impact the intimacy and health of relationships. 14. Women read tone more deeply than the words being said. This psychological insight highlights a profound and often unconscious aspect of female communication and perception, demonstrating a highly attuned sensitivity to the subtle nuances of vocal expression that can overshadow the literal meaning of spoken words. For many women, the how something is said, the pitch, rhythm, volume, inflection, and emotional coloring of a voice carries as much, if not more, weight than the what is being communicated. This isn't merely a preference, it's often an ingrained processing mechanism,
a finely tuned antenna for emotional subtext and underlying intentions that can reveal far more about a speaker's true state or message than their chosen vocabulary. This heightened sensitivity to tone is rooted in several factors. Firstly, women are often socialized to be more attuned to emotional cues and nonverbal communication. From a young age, they may be encouraged to be empathetic, to read situations, and to understand the unspoken dynamics within relationships. This training often leads to a sophisticated ability to detect subtle shifts in vocal delivery that signal underlying emotions, such as irritation, defensiveness, sadness, affection, or insincerity, even when the words themselves are neutral or positive. The brain is actively listening for congruence between the verbal message and the emotional message conveyed through tone. Secondly, evolutionarily, an acute awareness of tone might have served as a crucial survival mechanism. Being able to quickly and accurately assess the emotional state and intentions of others, particularly in social groups, could have been vital for navigating complex interpersonal dynamics, identifying threats, or fostering alliances. This inherent capacity, combined with social learning, can make women particularly adept at discerning the emotional truth behind spoken language. A partner might say, "I'm fine," but if the tone is clipped, flat, or laced with exasperation, a woman's brain will often prioritize the emotional message conveyed by the tone, interpreting it as, "I am not fine and I'm irritated by this conversation." The words become almost secondary, a veneer over a more potent emotional reality.
The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its potential for profound misunderstanding and emotional distress. When a woman prioritizes tone over words, a mismatch between the two can create significant anxiety and confusion. If a partner's words are reassuring, but their tone is dismissive or distant, she will likely internalize the negative emotional message regardless of the verbal content. This can lead to her feeling unheard, invalidated, or even gaslit if her partner insists, "But I said I love you, why are you upset?" when her internal experience is dominated by the coldness or indifference in their voice. She is reacting to an emotional truth that is very real to her, even if it's not explicitly stated. This can create a chasm in communication, where one person is focused on the literal meaning and the other is responding to the emotional undertones, leading to frustration on both sides. Furthermore, this sensitivity can make women highly vulnerable to subtle forms of emotional manipulation or passive aggression, where a seemingly innocuous statement can carry a heavy emotional load through its delivery. The disturbing truth is that this finely tuned ability, while a strength in discerning genuine connection and emotional authenticity, can also become a source of immense internal conflict and pain when the verbal and emotional messages are incongruent, forcing women to navigate a complex landscape where the unspoken truth often shouts louder than the spoken word. It reveals how deeply intertwined our emotional and auditory processing can be, and how the true meaning of communication often lies far beneath the surface of mere vocabulary. 15. Women often suppress anger until it becomes resentment. This psychological pathway is a deeply troubling illustration of how societal expectations and learned coping mechanisms can transform a valid, natural emotion into a corrosive, long-term internal burden. Anger, in its healthy form, is a signal, a boundary-setting mechanism, a response to perceived injustice or threat. However, for many women, the direct expression of anger is heavily stigmatized, leading to its systematic suppression. This suppression doesn't make the anger disappear. Instead, it forces it underground, where it ferments and transforms into a far more insidious and damaging emotion, resentment. The roots of this suppression are deeply embedded in societal conditioning. As discussed earlier, women are often taught that expressing anger directly is unfeminine, aggressive, bitchy, or dramatic. They are expected to be agreeable, empathetic, and to prioritize harmony. The fear of these labels and the potential relational or professional repercussions that come with them creates a powerful incentive to internalize anger rather than express it outwardly.
A woman might have learned through past experiences that her anger was met with dismissal, gaslighting, accusations, or even retaliation, reinforcing the belief that it's safer to keep it hidden. The internal dialogue might be, "I shouldn't feel this angry. It's not worth the fight. I'll just make things worse," or "No one will understand." When anger is suppressed, it doesn't simply vanish. It begins to accumulate like a toxic emotional residue. Each unaddressed slight, each unspoken frustration, each unmet need, each boundary violated without protest adds another layer to this internal buildup. Over time, this simmering, unexpressed anger crystallizes into resentment. Resentment is a bitter, chronic feeling of injustice or ill will towards someone who is perceived to have wronged you, often without the opportunity for resolution. It's anger that has been denied its voice, denied its outlet, and left to fester. It's characterized by a pervasive sense of being unfairly treated, unappreciated, or taken advantage of. The disturbing aspect of this transformation from anger to resentment lies in its insidious nature and its devastating long-term consequences. Resentment is a silent killer of relationships and inner peace. It erodes trust, fosters emotional distance, and creates a pervasive sense of bitterness. Unlike expressed anger, which can lead to conflict but also to resolution and deeper understanding, resentment often remains unspoken, creating a silent chasm between individuals. The partner, unaware of the accumulated grievances, might perceive the woman's growing distance, irritability, or lack of enthusiasm as inexplicable, leading to confusion and frustration on both sides. The woman, meanwhile, is trapped in a cycle of internal suffering, constantly replaying past hurts, feeling perpetually wronged, and struggling with the emotional burden of unexpressed rage. This internal suppression also takes a significant toll on her physical and mental health, contributing to chronic stress, anxiety, depression, and various psychosomatic symptoms. It prevents her from setting healthy boundaries, advocating for her needs, and engaging in authentic, direct communication. The disturbing truth is that a natural and potentially constructive emotion is often forced into a destructive channel, leading to prolonged emotional suffering, relational deterioration, and a profound sense of injustice that often goes unacknowledged by all parties involved. It reveals the immense psychological cost of societal pressures that deny women the full spectrum of emotional expression, forcing them into a silent, corrosive battle with their own suppressed feelings. 16. Women are more likely to replay conversations repeatedly in their minds. This psychological tendency is a hallmark of a highly active and often self-critical cognitive process, revealing a profound drive for understanding, analysis, and often a search for perfection or self-blame. While rumination is a human trait, many women exhibit a particularly pronounced inclination to replay past conversations, dissecting every word, every nuance, every perceived implication, long after the interaction has concluded. This isn't just about memory, it's an intense, often involuntary mental rehearsal and reevaluation driven by a complex interplay of emotional intelligence, a desire for clarity, and sometimes a pervasive anxiety about social and relational performance. One major factor contributing to this phenomenon is the heightened social and emotional attunement that many women develop. They are often socialized to be acutely aware of relational dynamics, interpersonal cues, and the potential impact of their words and actions on others. This can lead to a meticulous post-mortem of conversations, especially those that felt significant, challenging, or emotionally charged. The mind races to analyze. Did I say the right thing? Did I offend them? Was my tone appropriate? What did they really mean by that? Could I have expressed myself better? Is there a hidden message I missed? This internal replay is an attempt to gain mastery over social interactions, to learn from perceived mistakes, and to ensure future encounters are more successful or less fraught with anxiety.
Furthermore, the tendency to self-blame, as previously discussed, often fuels this rumination. If a woman perceives that something went wrong in a conversation, or if she feels misunderstood, her mind will often default to scrutinizing her own contribution first. She might replay her own words, tone, and body language, searching for flaws or missteps, even if the primary responsibility for the interaction's outcome lies elsewhere. This self-critical loop can be relentless, leading to feelings of guilt, regret, and a pervasive sense of inadequacy long after the actual event. The desire for clarity and understanding can morph into an obsessive quest for answers that may not exist, or for a perfect script that was never achievable in the messy reality of human interaction. The depth of emotional investment also plays a critical role. Conversations with loved ones, partners, or important colleagues carry significant emotional weight. When these interactions feel unresolved, tense, or deeply meaningful, the mind's inclination to replay them intensifies. The emotional stakes are high, and the desire to understand, to repair, or to simply grasp the full emotional truth behind the exchange becomes paramount. This is particularly true for women, who often process emotions more deeply and are more likely to verbalize and analyze their feelings. The disturbing aspect of this constant mental replay lies in its potential for profound emotional exhaustion and the exacerbation of anxiety. This relentless rumination can trap a woman in a cycle of overthinking, preventing her from being present in the moment and from letting go of past interactions. It can lead to sleepless nights, a pervasive sense of unease, and a constant questioning of her own social competence. The internal replay, while an attempt to find answers or prevent future pain, often creates more distress by magnifying perceived flaws and fostering a sense of helplessness over past events. It can also lead to misinterpretations, as the mind, in its attempt to fill in gaps, might create narratives that are not based on reality, further fueling anxiety and relational strain. The disturbing truth is that this powerful analytical capacity, driven by a desire for understanding and social harmony, can become a tormenting internal loop, draining emotional energy and fostering a persistent sense of self-doubt and unaddressed anxiety, preventing true mental peace long after the conversation has ended. 17. Women sometimes hide their intelligence to avoid intimidating partners. This particular psychological strategy is a poignant and disturbing testament to the enduring presence of gender stereotypes and the subtle yet powerful pressures that can compel women to diminish their authentic selves in the pursuit of relational harmony or perceived desirability. It's not a universal phenomenon, but for many women, the act of downplaying one's intellectual capabilities, feigning ignorance, or strategically avoiding showcasing one's knowledge is a learned defense mechanism. A calculated maneuver to navigate perceived social and romantic landscapes where overt female intelligence can be seen as a threat rather than an asset. The roots of this behavior lie in a long history of societal narratives that have, at various points, either implicitly or explicitly, suggested that highly intelligent or overtly accomplished women might be less desirable as romantic partners. These narratives can stem from traditional gender roles that cast men as providers and protectors and women as more submissive or nurturing. While these stereotypes are thankfully eroding, their vestiges still linger, creating an unconscious bias in some individuals. A woman might, through personal experience or observation, learn that her intelligence, her academic achievements, or her professional success has been met with discomfort, insecurity, or even outright rejection from potential partners. This can lead to the formation of a belief that to be loved or accepted, she must make herself less threatening or more approachable by muting her intellectual brilliance. The act of hiding intelligence can manifest in various ways. It might involve refraining from sharing insightful observations, downplaying achievements, feigning a lack of understanding on certain topics, allowing a partner to explain things she already knows, or actively steering conversations away from areas where her expertise would be evident. She might subtly defer to her partner's opinions, even when she holds a more informed perspective. This isn't about genuine humility. It's a strategic performance, an internal editing process designed to manage how she is perceived. The goal is to avoid making a partner feel inferior, insecure, or challenged, thereby preserving the relational dynamic and her perceived attractiveness. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its profound cost to the woman's authentic self and her personal growth. When a woman consistently hides her intelligence, she effectively denies a fundamental part of who she is. This can lead to a pervasive sense of inauthenticity, a feeling of not being truly seen for her whole self. It can stifle intellectual curiosity, limit opportunities for stimulating conversation, and prevent the development of a truly equitable and intellectually vibrant partnership. The constant effort required to maintain this intellectual mask is emotionally exhausting and can lead to resentment, a quiet bitterness about having to diminish herself for the sake of another's comfort. Furthermore, it can attract partners who are indeed intimidated by intelligence, thus perpetuating the cycle and preventing her from finding a partner who genuinely values and celebrates her full intellectual capacity. The disturbing truth is that this behavior reveals a deep-seated societal insecurity about female power and intellect, forcing women into a painful choice between being their authentic, brilliant selves and being perceived as romantically desirable. It highlights the insidious ways in which gender roles can still influence personal choices, leading many women to sacrifice a part of their identity in the hope of securing love and acceptance, ultimately undermining the very foundation of genuine connection and mutual respect. It is a quiet form of self-betrayal, driven by a perceived necessity to conform to outdated and limiting expectations. 18. Women may interpret inconsistency as rejection. This psychological tendency highlights a finely tuned sensitivity to patterns and a profound need for predictability and emotional security within relationships, particularly for women who have experienced relational instability in the past. Inconsistency, for many women, is not merely an inconvenience or a sign of forgetfulness. It often triggers a deeper, more primal alarm bell, signaling potential emotional withdrawal, disinterest, or even outright rejection. This interpretation is less about being overly sensitive and more about a learned vigilance, where fluctuating behavior is perceived as a direct threat to the stability and safety of the emotional bond.
The foundation of this interpretation often lies in the human brain's natural inclination to seek patterns and make predictions, especially in social contexts. Consistency in a partner's behavior, their communication frequency, their attentiveness, their affection, their follow-through on promises, creates a sense of safety and predictability. It communicates reliability and commitment. When this consistency falters, even subtly, it can disrupt this sense of security. For women, who are often socialized to be highly attuned to relational dynamics and emotional cues, these inconsistencies can be particularly jarring. They might immediately begin to search for an explanation, and if a clear, reassuring explanation is not readily available, the mind can jump to the most threatening conclusion: rejection. This tendency is significantly amplified by past relational wounds, as discussed earlier. If a woman has experienced previous relationships where partners were emotionally inconsistent, pulled away without explanation, or ultimately abandoned her, her system becomes hyper-vigilant to any similar cues. A delayed text, a forgotten plan, a sudden shift in mood, or a period of reduced affection might not just be seen as isolated incidents, but as the beginning of a familiar, painful pattern. Her brain, in an attempt to protect her from future hurt, interprets these inconsistencies as evidence of a partner's waning interest or a prelude to withdrawal, triggering anxiety and a feeling of being pushed away. It becomes a self-protective mechanism, an attempt to anticipate and brace for the pain of rejection before it fully manifests. The disturbing aspect of this interpretation lies in its potential to create a self-fulfilling prophecy and to generate significant distress in otherwise healthy relationships. A partner who is simply busy, distracted, or genuinely forgetful might inadvertently trigger deep-seated fears of rejection, leading the woman to withdraw, become anxious, or even push the partner away in anticipation of being hurt. This can create a cycle of misunderstanding. The woman perceives inconsistency as rejection, reacts with anxiety or distance, which the partner might then interpret as her inconsistency or disinterest, leading to a real strain on the relationship. The emotional cost to the woman is immense, as she is constantly on edge, scrutinizing every action for signs of impending abandonment, even when no such threat exists. The disturbing truth is that this highlights a profound vulnerability to perceived instability in relationships, forcing women to navigate a delicate balance between trusting their intuition and managing anxieties rooted in past experiences. It reveals how deeply the need for emotional security is interwoven with the expectation of consistency, and how even minor deviations from established patterns can be interpreted through the lens of past pain, leading to a silent, often agonizing internal battle against the specter of rejection. It underscores the importance of clear, consistent communication in building and maintaining trust, especially when one partner carries the burden of past relational wounds. Women attach deeply to someone who understands their emotional language. This psychological fact underscores a profound truth about female intimacy. Beyond shared interests, physical attraction, or even intellectual compatibility, the ability of a partner to genuinely comprehend and respond to a woman's emotional world is a paramount catalyst for deep, lasting attachment. Emotional language refers not just to the words used to express feelings, but to the entire spectrum of nonverbal cues, subtle expressions, underlying needs, and nuanced sensitivities that constitute a person's inner emotional landscape. When a woman encounters someone who can effortlessly speak this language, who can intuit her feelings, validate her experiences, and respond with genuine empathy, it creates an unparalleled sense of safety, recognition, and profound connection that forms the bedrock of deep attachment. The significance of this understanding stems from several factors. Firstly, as discussed, women are often socialized to be highly emotionally intelligent and expressive, even indirectly. They are encouraged to process and communicate feelings, and thus, having a partner who can meet them on this level is crucial. When a woman feels truly understood emotionally, it validates her entire internal experience. It signals that her feelings, whether joy, sadness, anger, or anxiety, are not dismissed, minimized, or judged, but are instead acknowledged and accepted as legitimate. This recognition is incredibly powerful, as it combats the pervasive fear of being misunderstood or labeled as dramatic that many women carry. It's the difference between saying, "I'm fine," and having a partner respond, "You say you're fine, but your eyes tell me otherwise. What's really going on?" A response that immediately fosters a sense of being seen beyond the surface. Secondly, the ability to understand emotional language creates a profound sense of safety. When a woman feels her emotional landscape is being navigated with care and insight, it builds trust. She learns that she can be vulnerable, that her deepest fears and insecurities can be shared without fear of ridicule or abandonment. This emotional safety allows for a level of intimacy that goes far beyond superficial connection. It permits her to drop her masks, to reveal her authentic self, and to experience a rare form of psychological comfort. This deep understanding also fosters a sense of co-regulation, where a partner's calm, empathetic presence can help soothe her own emotional distress, solidifying the bond. The disturbing aspect of this lies in the rarity of such profound emotional attunement, and the potential for women to remain in relationships where this critical need is unmet, leading to a silent, gnawing loneliness. When a woman doesn't find someone who speaks her emotional language, she can feel perpetually isolated, even within a seemingly loving partnership. She might repeatedly try to express herself, only to be met with blank stares, logical solutions instead of empathy, or dismissive remarks, leading to frustration and a gradual withdrawal of her authentic self. This unmet need can lead to a profound sense of emotional starvation, where the relationship, despite other positive qualities, lacks the depth of connection she craves. The disturbing truth is that while many qualities can attract a woman, the profound, almost spiritual connection that comes from being truly, deeply understood on an emotional level is often the most powerful adhesive for lasting attachment. It reveals how crucial emotional resonance is for female well-being, and how its absence can create a silent but pervasive void, leading women to either remain unfulfilled or to embark on a perpetual search for that elusive yet essential emotional mirroring. It highlights that love without understanding can often feel hollow, and that the capacity to truly get another's emotional world is perhaps the most potent form of intimacy one can offer.
20. Women fall for men who make them feel safe, not just loved. This profound psychological insight reveals a fundamental and often underestimated prerequisite for deep, lasting attraction and attachment in women. While love is undoubtedly a powerful emotion and a cornerstone of any romantic relationship, for many women, the feeling of safety, emotional, psychological, and often physical, is an even more foundational requirement, a non-negotiable bedrock upon which true love can flourish and deepen. It's not enough to simply feel loved. There must be an accompanying sense of unwavering security, a deep trust that one is protected, cared for, and free from harm or threat within the relationship. The concept of safety here is multi-layered. Firstly, it encompasses emotional safety. This means a partner who is consistent, reliable, and predictable in their emotional responses. It means someone who is not prone to sudden outbursts of anger, emotional withdrawal, or manipulative behaviors. It means feeling secure enough to express vulnerability, to share fears and insecurities without the risk of judgment, dismissal, or exploitation. A man who consistently validates her feelings, respects her boundaries, and creates a space where she can be her authentic self without fear of criticism or rejection fosters this crucial emotional safety. He makes her feel seen, heard, and respected, which is paramount. Secondly, psychological safety is equally vital. This involves a partner who supports her autonomy, encourages her growth, and respects her individuality. It means not being gaslit, not having her reality questioned, and not being subjected to subtle forms of control or manipulation. It's about feeling secure in her own mind and judgment, knowing that her partner is on her side, a true ally rather than a subtle adversary. This extends to feeling safe from emotional games, from ambiguity, and from the anxieties of inconsistency. Finally, and perhaps most overtly, physical safety is paramount. This means a partner who would never intentionally cause her harm, who would protect her, and who makes her feel secure in her physical presence. Even in the absence of overt threats, a man who carries himself with respect, who is not aggressive, and who makes her feel physically protected in the world contributes to this fundamental sense of security. The disturbing aspect of this truth lies in its implication that love, by itself, is often insufficient. A woman can feel loved, cherished, desired, and even adored, yet if that love is delivered inconsistently, if it comes with emotional volatility, if it's accompanied by a lack of respect for her boundaries, or if it makes her feel psychologically precarious, the deep attachment and falling in love process can be severely inhibited or even reversed. She might recognize the love, but her deeper, more primal self will remain guarded, unable to fully surrender to the relationship because the foundational element of safety is missing. This can lead to a heartbreaking paradox where a woman genuinely loves a man but cannot fully commit or allow herself to fall completely because a subtle yet pervasive sense of unease or threat lingers. The disturbing truth is that this highlights a profound, often subconscious wisdom in women that prioritizes stability and security above all else in the pursuit of a lasting bond. It reveals that the capacity for deep emotional attachment is intricately linked to the feeling of being truly protected and secure, not just desired or appreciated. It underscores how past experiences, both personal and societal, can hardwire women to prioritize safety as the ultimate litmus test for a partner, making it the silent, powerful determinant of whether love can truly take root and flourish. It acknowledges that a man who provides a sanctuary of safety often holds a far deeper and more enduring appeal than one who offers only fleeting passion or superficial affection. 21. Women's biggest emotional fear is betrayal of trust. This profound psychological insight penetrates to the very core of female relational psychology, revealing a vulnerability so potent that it can overshadow even the fear of loneliness or the loss of love.
For many women, the ultimate emotional threat, the deepest wound, is not merely a breakup or a disagreement, but the shattering of trust through betrayal. This fear is deeply ingrained, often stemming from a confluence of evolutionary imperatives, societal conditioning, and personal experiences, where trust, once given, was irrevocably broken. When this foundational pillar crumbles, it doesn't just damage the relationship. It can fundamentally alter a woman's capacity for future connection, her sense of self, and her ability to navigate the world with an open heart. The significance of trust for women is multifaceted. In an evolutionary context, the ability to rely on a partner for support, protection, and provision was paramount for survival and the well-being of offspring. Betrayal, in this sense, represented a direct threat to security and stability. While modern life has evolved, these deep-seated instincts often remain. Societally, women are often encouraged to invest deeply in relationships, to be vulnerable, and to build their lives around partnerships. This requires an immense act of trust, a belief that the other person will act with integrity, honesty, and loyalty. When that trust is violated, it's not just a breach of an agreement, it's a profound attack on her judgment, her emotional investment, and her sense of safety in the world. Betrayal can take many forms: infidelity, deception, gaslighting, emotional abandonment, or a partner actively working against her interests. Regardless of its manifestation, the impact is devastating. It's not just the pain of the act itself, but the shattering of a perceived reality. The person she thought she knew, the foundation she believed was solid, proves to be illusory. This can lead to a profound sense of disorientation, a questioning of her own intuition, and a pervasive feeling of foolishness or naivety. The emotional world she carefully constructed, built on the premise of trust, collapses, leaving her feeling exposed, vulnerable, and profoundly hurt. The fear, then, is not just of the betrayal itself, but of the subsequent psychological and emotional fallout, the loss of self-trust, the difficulty in trusting others again, and the overwhelming sense of having been fundamentally wronged.
The disturbing aspect of this fear lies in its depth and its long-lasting repercussions. A woman who has experienced significant betrayal often carries that wound for years, sometimes for a lifetime. It can lead to hypervigilance in future relationships, an inability to fully relax and be vulnerable, and a constant search for signs of deceit. Even in healthy relationships, the ghost of past betrayal can linger, making it difficult to fully open her heart and invest completely. This fear can inadvertently push away genuinely trustworthy partners as she unconsciously tests and retests their loyalty, or struggles with pervasive anxiety even in the absence of genuine threat. The profound emotional pain associated with betrayal often outweighs the pain of simple loss because it involves a deliberate act of deception that strikes at the core of her capacity for connection. The disturbing truth is that this fear highlights the immense vulnerability inherent in deep emotional investment and the catastrophic impact when that vulnerability is exploited. It reveals that for many women, the integrity of the emotional bond is paramount, and its violation is the ultimate undoing. This fear is a testament to the essential role of trust in allowing women to fully engage, love, and thrive in relationships, and the devastating consequences when that trust is irrevocably broken. It underscores that while love can inspire, it is trust that truly sustains, and its absence or betrayal can leave an indelible, deeply disturbing mark on the female psyche. 22. Women remember emotional details of fights far longer than men. This psychological observation points to a significant difference in how emotional information, particularly within conflict scenarios, is processed, stored, and retrieved between genders. For many women, the memory of a fight or an emotionally charged disagreement isn't just about the facts or the outcome. It's a rich tapestry woven with intricate emotional details: the tone of voice, the facial expressions, the subtle shifts in body language, the specific words that stung, the feeling of being misunderstood, the lingering sense of injustice or hurt. These emotional imprints often remain vivid and accessible in her memory for a much longer duration than for many men, shaping her perceptions of the relationship and influencing future interactions. The reasons for this difference are complex. Firstly, women are often socialized to be more emotionally expressive and to process emotions through verbalization and introspection. This means that during a fight, they are likely to be more acutely aware of and engaged with the emotional undercurrents. This deeper engagement during the conflict itself leads to more robust emotional encoding in memory. The experience isn't just a logical exchange of points, it's a profound emotional event that leaves a lasting impression. Furthermore, women tend to ruminate more on relational issues and replay conversations in their minds, as previously discussed. This cognitive rehearsal of the fight, including its emotional components, further solidifies these memories, making them more resilient to decay over time. Each replay reinforces the emotional impact, keeping the details fresh and potent. Secondly, from an evolutionary perspective, an acute memory for social and emotional details, particularly negative ones, could have served as a crucial mechanism for navigating complex social hierarchies and avoiding future threats. Remembering who caused emotional pain, how it happened, and the specific dynamics involved could inform future protective strategies. Societally, women have often been in positions where they needed to be highly attuned to the emotional states of others to maintain harmony or ensure their own safety, leading to a refined ability to recall such details. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its potential to create a significant imbalance and ongoing friction within relationships. For a woman, a past fight, with all its emotional nuances, might still feel fresh and unresolved, influencing her current feelings and behaviors. She might bring up a specific phrasing or a particular look from a conflict that happened months or even years ago, because the emotional impact of that detail is still very real to her. For her male partner, who might have moved on, forgotten the specifics, or processed the event more factually, this can be incredibly confusing and frustrating. He might genuinely believe the issue was resolved, or that it's no longer relevant, leading him to feel unfairly accused, or to perceive her as holding on to things or being overly sensitive. This disparity in emotional memory can create a communication gap where one person is reacting to a living emotional history and the other is operating from a clean slate, leading to a pervasive sense of being misunderstood and unheard on the woman's part and a feeling of exacerbation on the man's. The disturbing truth is that this difference in emotional recall can inadvertently perpetuate conflict or prevent true resolution, as one partner's pains remain vividly present while the other's fade. It reveals how deeply emotional experiences are etched into the female psyche, making it difficult to simply let go of past hurts when the memory of their emotional texture remains so potent. It underscores the immense burden of carrying such detailed emotional histories and the profound impact it has on the ongoing dynamics and emotional health of a relationship, highlighting how one person's forgotten past can remain another's very present reality. 23. Women can stay loyal even after falling out of love. This profound psychological truth reveals a complex interplay of commitment, responsibility, fear, and a deep-seated relational inertia that can compel women to remain within a partnership long after the romantic flame has extinguished. It challenges the simplistic notion that love is the sole determinant of relational longevity and exposes the powerful, often self-sacrificing forces that can bind a woman to a partner even when her heart has emotionally disengaged. This isn't about feigning affection, it's about a commitment to the structure, the history, and the perceived obligations of the relationship, even in the absence of genuine romantic feeling. Several factors contribute to this enduring loyalty. Firstly, a powerful sense of responsibility and commitment often plays a significant role. Many women are socialized to take their commitments seriously, particularly in relationships. They might feel a deep sense of loyalty to the shared history, the life built together, or the promises made, even if those promises now feel hollow. This is especially true if there are children involved, as the perceived stability of the family unit can become a paramount concern, overriding personal romantic fulfillment. The thought of breaking up the family, causing pain to children, or disrupting the established order can be a powerful deterrent to leaving, even when love has faded. Secondly, The fear of starting over, as previously discussed, is a potent motivator. The prospect of dismantling a life, facing loneliness, navigating financial instability, or enduring the emotional pain of a breakup can feel far more daunting than remaining in a loveless but familiar situation. The known comfort of routine, even if it's a comfort devoid of passion, can be preferable to the terrifying unknown. This fear can be compounded by societal pressures or internal beliefs that one should make a relationship work, or that leaving signifies a personal failure. Furthermore, women often invest deeply, not just emotionally, but also practically and socially in their relationships. Their identity, their social circle, and their daily routines can become intricately intertwined with their partner. Untangling these threads can feel like an overwhelming task, making the inertia of staying seem easier than the monumental effort of leaving. There might also be a lingering sense of care or affection for the partner, even if romantic love is absent. She might still value him as a person, a friend, or a co-parent, and the idea of causing him pain through a separation can be a significant inhibitor. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in the silent, profound emotional sacrifice it entails. To remain loyal in a relationship where love has died is to live a life of quiet inauthenticity. It means suppressing one's own desires for romantic fulfillment, emotional intimacy, and genuine connection, leading to a pervasive sense of emptiness, sadness, and often resentment. The woman might continue to perform the duties of a loving partner, to go through the motions, but her heart is no longer truly engaged. This can lead to a slow erosion of her spirit, a loss of joy, and a deep-seated feeling of being trapped. The partner, meanwhile, might remain entirely unaware of this internal shift, believing the relationship to be stable, while one half of the partnership is experiencing a profound internal disconnect. The disturbing truth is that this loyalty, while admirable in its commitment, can become a prison, forcing women to live a life that is emotionally unfulfilling out of a sense of duty, fear, or profound responsibility. It reveals the immense psychological burden of maintaining a facade of love, and the silent cost of prioritizing external stability over internal emotional truth. It underscores the fact that the absence of love does not always equate to the absence of commitment, and that for many women, the ties of loyalty and responsibility can be far more tenacious and far more emotionally draining than the bonds of romantic affection itself. 24. Women often apologize to maintain peace not because they're wrong. This psychological tendency is a profound and disturbing illustration of the deeply ingrained social conditioning that often compels women to prioritize relational harmony and the emotional comfort of others over their own sense of justice, self-worth, or authentic expression. An apology, in its truest form, is an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and an expression of remorse. However, for many women, the act of apologizing can become a strategic tool, a preemptive measure, or a default response, deployed not out of genuine culpability, but out of a powerful desire to de-escalate conflict, prevent further tension, or restore a sense of calm in an interaction. This phenomenon is rooted in a lifetime of messages about their role as peacemakers and emotional caretakers. One primary driver of this behavior is the societal expectation for women to be agreeable, accommodating, and non-confrontational. They are often implicitly taught that maintaining harmony in relationships is their responsibility, and that conflict, especially overt disagreement, is to be avoided at all costs. An apology, even an undeserved one, can be seen as the quickest and most effective way to diffuse tension, to placate an upset partner, or to prevent an argument from escalating. It becomes a relational lubricant, a verbal olive branch, regardless of whether she genuinely believes she has done something wrong. The internal thought process might be, it's easier to just say sorry than to argue, or if I apologize, maybe they'll calm down, or I just want this to be over. Furthermore, the fear of being labeled dramatic, argumentative, or difficult, as previously discussed, plays a significant role.
Many women have learned that asserting their perspective or defending themselves in a conflict can lead to negative repercussions, including dismissal, invalidation, or further emotional distress. Apologizing, even when not at fault, can be a way to avoid these labels and to maintain a perceived image of being reasonable and easygoing. It's a protective mechanism against potential backlash or further emotional labor. This is compounded by the tendency for women to blame themselves first when things go wrong, making the apology a natural, albeit often unwarranted, extension of this self-reproach. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its insidious erosion of a woman's sense of self and her authentic voice. When a woman consistently apologizes for things she isn't responsible for, or for merely having a different perspective, she subtly teaches herself that her feelings, her needs, and her opinions are less valuable than others. It can lead to a pervasive sense of self-doubt and a difficulty in asserting her boundaries. This constant unmerited self-blame can chip away at her self-worth, making her feel perpetually inadequate or guilty. It also creates an unhealthy relational dynamic, where her partner may learn that she will always concede, always take the blame, and that their own accountability is diminished. This can lead to an imbalance of power, where one partner is constantly carrying the emotional burden of conflict resolution, even when they are not at fault. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its insidious erosion of a woman's sense of self and her authentic voice. When a woman consistently apologizes for things she isn't responsible for, or for merely having a different perspective, she subtly teaches herself that her feelings, her needs, and her opinions are less valuable than others. It can lead to a pervasive sense of self-doubt and a difficulty in asserting her boundaries. This constant unmerited self-blame can chip away at her self-worth, making her feel perpetually inadequate or guilty. It also creates an unhealthy relational dynamic, where her partner may learn that she will always concede, always take the blame, and that their own accountability is diminished. This can lead to an imbalance of power, where one partner is constantly carrying the emotional burden of conflict resolution, even when they are not at fault. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon lies in its insidious erosion of a woman's sense of self and her authentic voice. When a woman consistently apologizes for things she isn't responsible for, or for merely having a different perspective, she subtly teaches herself that her feelings, her needs, and her opinions are less valuable than others. It can lead to a pervasive sense of self-doubt and a difficulty in asserting her boundaries. This constant unmerited self-blame can chip away at her self-blame, making her feel perpetually inadequate or guilty. It also creates an unhealthy relational dynamic, where her partner may learn that she will always concede, always take the blame, and that their own accountability is diminished. This can lead to an imbalance of power, where one partner is constantly carrying the emotional burden of conflict resolution, even when they are not at fault.
25. Women can become emotionally numb after prolonged stress. This final psychological observation reveals a profound and disturbing coping mechanism, a desperate physiological and psychological shutdown that occurs when the human system is overwhelmed by chronic, unrelenting stress. Emotional numbness is not a sign of indifference or a lack of feeling. Rather, it is often a protective response, a last resort for a mind and body that have been pushed beyond their capacity to cope with persistent emotional or psychological strain. For many women, who often carry immense burdens of responsibility, emotional labor, and societal pressures, prolonged stress can lead to a state where the vibrant spectrum of feelings dulls, becomes muted, or even disappears entirely, leaving a void where emotions once resided. Prolonged stress, whether it stems from an unhealthy relationship, demanding professional responsibilities, caregiving duties, financial strain, or a combination of these, places an immense burden on the nervous system. Initially, the body responds with heightened vigilance, anxiety, and a full range of stress responses. However, when this state becomes chronic, when there is no relief in sight, and when the individual feels powerless to change their circumstances, the system can enter a state of emotional exhaustion.
To prevent complete collapse or overwhelming pain, the brain begins to depersonalize, to dissociate, and to essentially turn down the volume on emotional experience. This is a survival mechanism, an attempt to protect the psyche from being constantly bombarded by distress. Emotional numbness manifests as a pervasive sense of detachment. A woman might find herself unable to feel joy, sadness, anger, or even love with the same intensity as before. Events that would normally evoke a strong emotional response might be met with a flat, indifferent affect. She might feel disconnected from her own body, from her relationships, and from the world around her. This isn't a deliberate choice. It's an involuntary response, a physiological and psychological dampening of her emotional circuits. She might go through the motions of life, performing her duties, engaging in conversations, but internally she feels hollow, empty, or like she's observing her life from a distance. The capacity for empathy might diminish, her sex drive might disappear, and her interest in activities she once enjoyed might wane. The disturbing aspect of this emotional numbness lies in its profound impact on a woman's quality of life and her capacity for genuine connection. While it offers a temporary respite from overwhelming pain, it also robs her of the richness and depth of human experience. It can lead to a profound sense of isolation as she struggles to connect with others on an emotional level or to even understand her own internal state. Relationships can suffer immensely as partners might perceive her as cold, distant, or uncaring, unaware that she is in a state of self-preservation. This numbness can also delay the process of addressing the underlying stressors, as the very mechanism designed to protect her also prevents her from fully recognizing the depth of her suffering and the urgent need for change. It can be a precursor to burnout, depression, and other severe mental health challenges. The disturbing truth is that this emotional shutdown is a stark indicator of a system pushed to its absolute limits, a silent cry for help from a woman who has endured too much for too long. It reveals the immense psychological cost of chronic stress and the devastating consequences when the human spirit is forced to self-protect by disconnecting from its own vibrant emotional core. It underscores the profound vulnerability of the female psyche to prolonged pressure and the desperate measures it takes to survive, even if those measures come at the cost of genuine feeling and authentic engagement with life. It is a powerful reminder of the critical importance of recognizing and addressing chronic stress before it forces the soul into a state of profound, protective, and ultimately debilitating numbness. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the disturbing yet incredibly insightful psychological facts about female psychology. We hope this exploration has offered you a new perspective, fostering empathy and understanding for the complex inner worlds that shape our lives. Recognizing these patterns is the first step towards deeper connection, more authentic relationships, and a greater compassion for ourselves and for the women around us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving for deeper understanding.